My daughter and son-in-law insisted I wasn't her biological mother. They demanded a DNA test to seize my inheritance. But when the doctor announced the results, my son-in-law's face turned pale as a ghost, and my daughter stood frozen in silence. Did they think they could fool an old woman like me? That DNA evidence was about to shatter their greedy delusion. Thank you for being here. Before I reveal what that DNA test showed, drop a comment where are you watching from. It helps me know you're following along. Note while some details are fictionalized for storytelling, the lessons about family greed and standing firm are worth learning. When my daughter demanded a DNA test to prove I didn't deserve the inheritance her father left behind, I thought it was a cruel joke. But the look in her eyes, distant guarded, told me this was real. It was a Monday evening in October when I drove through Portland's East End toward Amanda's townhouse. The autumn air carried the scent of wood smoke and dying leaves. William had been gone for 2 years, but I still reached for his hand on long drives, still turned to share observations with an empty passenger seat. "Wish me luck," I whispered to the silence. Tyler answered the door before I could knock. He wore a pressed shirt and that practiced smile I'd never quite trusted. "Catherine," he said. Not Mom as he'd called me in the early years, just Catherine, formal and cold. "Come in. We've been expecting you." Amanda appeared behind him and my heart squeezed. My daughter, 39, a high school teacher with William's thoughtful eyes and a gentle soul too trusting for this world. She wouldn't meet my gaze. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. The dining room table was set for 3. A roasted chicken sat in the center, surrounded by vegetables. Everything appeared normal. Everything felt wrong. We made small talk as we ate. The weather, Amanda's students, the foundation I'd been planning in William's name. But tension hung over the table like a storm cloud. Tyler set down his fork with deliberate precision. "Catherine, we need to discuss something important." I weighted my water glass steady in my hand despite my racing pulse. "With William's estate still in probate," he continued, "we need certainty about the legal aspects of the inheritance. We need a DNA test to confirm everything is legally clear." The room tilted. A DNA test. My daughter was asking me to prove our bond was real. "Amanda," I managed, "why would you ask such a thing?" Tyler leaned forward. "It's nothing personal, Catherine, but there have been questions, discrepancies in the family records. We just want proper documentation for everyone's protection." I turned to my daughter. "Do you believe this?" Amanda's face crumpled slightly, but Tyler's hand found hers. "Mom, it's just a formality. You shouldn't be afraid if there's nothing to hide. Tyler says any legitimate parent would want to settle this." Tyler says. When had my daughter started letting her husband's voice replace her own? Tyler produced a document from beneath his napkin. He'd had it ready all along. A consent form for DNA testing already filled out except for my signature. "Sign this by Friday." He said, the warmth gone entirely. "Otherwise, we'll have to assume you're hiding something that disqualifies you from William's estate." Something about Tyler nagged at my memory, the set of his jaw, the way his eyes went flat when he thought he'd won. Had I seen that look before? "I'll think about it," I said quietly, standing. Amanda rose. "Mom." "It's all right, sweetheart." I kissed her cheek, even though she'd just asked me to prove I had the right to call her that. I left their house that night knowing something had shattered between us. The October wind cut through my coat as I walked to my car. The consent form crumpled in my fist. But what I didn't yet know was how deep this betrayal would go, or that the answers I needed were waiting in a letter my husband had written, sealed and hidden away for exactly this moment. The house was dark when I arrived home that Monday night, just as it had been every evening for the past 2 years. The silence pressed against me as I closed the door behind me, still clutching the crumpled consent form in my hand. I didn't turn on the lights. Somehow the darkness felt appropriate. I sank onto the living room couch, the same one where William and I had spent countless evenings, reading side by side, his presence so familiar I could almost feel it now. Almost. If they ever question her place in this family, Catherine... His voice echoed in my memory, not from weeks ago, but from that last lucid conversation we'd had 3 days before the cancer finally claimed him. I'd been adjusting his pillows, trying to make him comfortable, when his hand had gripped mine with surprising strength. "Promise me you'll remember," he'd said, his gray eyes urgent despite the morphine haze. "If they ever make you doubt, if anyone tries to suggest Amanda isn't ours, there are things I've prepared. You'll know when the time comes." I'd promised, not understanding then what he meant. I understood now. My feet carried me upstairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, though I still couldn't think of it that way. The mahogany keepsake box sat on William's dresser, exactly where I'd left it after the funeral. I'd avoided opening it for 2 years, unable to face the flood of memories inside. Tonight I had no choice. Inside, beneath the folded flag from his military service and the watch his father had given him, I found a cream-colored envelope. My breath caught. The paper was heavier than ordinary stationery, and William's distinctive angular handwriting covered the front in dark blue ink. The words stopped me cold. "Only open if they question whether Amanda is truly your daughter." My fingers trembled as I traced the letters. He'd known. Somehow William had known this day would come. The envelope was sealed with red wax pressed with his signet ring, the one that now sat in Amanda's jewelry box, a gift he'd given her on her 30th birthday. I held the letter to my chest, tears finally spilling over. Part of me wanted to rip it open immediately to find whatever answers or comfort William had left me. But another part, the part that had loved him for 43 years, knew better. William had been methodical, careful. If he'd sealed this letter and given it such specific instructions, there was a reason. I placed it on my nightstand within reach, but unopened. Whatever wisdom he'd left me, whatever evidence or explanation lay inside, I would honor his wishes. The time would come soon enough. My phone buzzed, shattering the silence. Patricia Fleming's name glowed on the screen. I answered on the second ring. "Patricia. Catherine." Her voice was tight with an urgency I'd rarely heard from William's old law partner. "We need to talk. Tomorrow morning. There are things William left behind, things you need to see before Friday." Before I had to sign that consent form. "What things?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "Not over the phone. Come to my office at 9. And Catherine..." She paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. "Bring that envelope you found. The one with the red wax seal. William told me about it 2 years ago, and I think we're going to need it. Tuesday morning, 9 a.m. Patricia's office overlooked Casco Bay, but I couldn't spare the view a second glance. My focus was entirely on the woman sitting across from me and the thick folder she'd just placed on the mahogany desk between us. "You look exhausted," Patricia said gently. We'd known each other for over 20 years. She and William had been law school classmates before becoming partners. If anyone understood what he'd been thinking in those final months, it was her. "I didn't sleep much," I admitted, touching the envelope in my purse. "Your call last night..." "Patricia, what's going on?" She leaned forward, her expression grave. "William knew this was coming, Catherine. Not the specifics, perhaps, but he knew someone would eventually try to attack your family. That's why he spent the last year of his life building safeguards." My stomach tightened. "Attack. It's the right word." She opened the folder, revealing pages of legal documents. "Do you remember when William revised his will 18 months ago?" I nodded slowly. He'd been so matter-of-fact about it, insisting I didn't need to bother with the details. "There's a clause buried in Article 7, Patricia continued, sliding a highlighted page toward me. "Any heir who demands DNA testing to challenge another family member's legitimacy will immediately forfeit all inheritance rights." The words swam before my eyes. He set a trap. "A legal mousetrap," Patricia confirmed. "William anticipated someone might use Amanda's adoption against her, so he made that very action trigger their own disqualification. I thought of Tyler's insistence. Monday night, the consent form he'd pushed across the table with such confidence. He had no idea what he was walking into. But why? My voice barely rose above a whisper. Why would anyone do this? Patricia's jaw tightened. It's not about Amanda. It never was. William discovered something troubling about Tyler. He hired investigators to look into his background. Tyler. The name felt suddenly foreign, as if I'd never really known the man my daughter had married 5 years ago. William left a trail. Names, dates, records. He was meticulous as always. She paused, choosing her words carefully. He also left instructions for me to contact Gregory Bennett. My breath caught. Gregory Bennett, the attorney who handled Amanda's adoption. William's old friend, yes. Gregory has records from 35 years ago, every document ironclad and immediately available if anyone questions Amanda's legal status. I felt dizzy. William had thought of everything planned for a threat I hadn't even seen coming. How long had he known? How many nights had he lain awake beside me, carrying this burden alone? Patricia pulled out one more sheet, a handwritten list in William's distinctive script. My eyes skimmed the names: Private Investigator David Chen, Financial Analyst Sarah Ortiz, Gregory Bennett, Dr. James Anderson, and there, fourth from the bottom, Tyler Nash. My hand trembled as I touched the name. William investigated Tyler. For over a year, Patricia said quietly. He started not long after we revised the will. Whatever he found, it was serious enough that he built an entire legal fortress around your family. She met my eyes. The question is, what did Tyler find out, and how desperate is he? The consent form in my purse suddenly felt like a ticking bomb. Friday. Tyler wanted my signature by Friday. William had been 3 steps ahead, but was it enough? Wednesday morning arrived cold and gray, matching the knot in my stomach. I'd barely slept since leaving Patricia's office yesterday. The consent form Tyler had given me Monday night sat on my nightstand beside William's sealed letter, both waiting for decisions I wasn't ready to make. Then I saw Amanda's car pull into the driveway. She never came without calling first, not in 39 years. Through the kitchen window, I watched her sit motionless behind the wheel hands, gripping it even after she'd cut the engine. That look on her face, I knew it. The same one I'd worn at her age when doing something I hated, but felt I had no choice about. When she finally came to the door, there was no hug, no "Hi, Mom" in that bright voice she'd inherited from William, just a stiff nod as she stepped inside. "Coffee," I offered. "No, thank you." She clutched her purse like a shield. "I can't stay long." We stood in the entryway, my daughter and I separated by 3 feet that might as well have been the Atlantic. Amanda reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. Official, typed on legal letterhead I didn't recognize. Not Patricia's firm. "I need you to sign this." Another consent form, more formal than the one Tyler had shown me Monday. "Tyler says this is necessary." Amanda said, her voice flat in a way that broke my heart more than tears would have. "To make the inheritance rights legally clear. He says it protects both of us from any future challenges." I looked up from the document. "Tyler says." "Mom, please don't." "Do you trust Tyler?" I interrupted gently. "Or do you trust me?" For just a moment, I saw my daughter again, the little girl who'd run to me with scraped knees, the young woman who'd asked me to help pick out her wedding dress. Then the shutters came down. This isn't about trust, it's about legal protection. Legal protection from what from me? Mom. Her voice cracked slightly. "I'm sorry, I have to do this." Have to, not want to, have to. I thought of Patricia's words. It's not about Amanda, it never was. I thought of William's sealed letter upstairs. I thought of Article 7, that beautiful trap my husband had built. And I thought of my daughter standing in my entryway like a stranger delivering Tyler's demands because she believed she had no choice. I picked up a pen from the hall table. "Where do I sign?" Amanda's eyes widened. You'll do it, you're still my daughter," I said, signing my name with careful strokes, no matter what any piece of paper says. I handed her the form. Our fingers touched briefly. Hers were trembling. "Thank you," she whispered, then softer. "I'm sorry." She turned toward the door. At the threshold, she paused and glanced back, guilt and confusion, and maybe regret flickering across her face, but she didn't come back. I watched her car pull away from the window. I was losing her. Tyler's manipulation was working, pulling her away one small compromise at a time, but I wouldn't lose her without a fight. William had seen this coming. He'd prepared for it. Now it was my turn to trust him one last time. That night, sleep was impossible. After Amanda left, I'd tried lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face at the threshold, that flicker of guilt, before she turned away. At midnight, I gave up and went downstairs to William's old study. The laptop glowed in the darkness as I typed Gregory Bennett, Portland, Maine attorney. The results loaded slowly, blue links appearing one by one. Gregory Bennett, family law attorney. 40 years of practice. Retired 5 years ago. A professional headshot showed a man in his mid-60s with kind eyes and silver hair, older now than the last time I'd seen him, but still recognizable. Gregory Bennett specializes in adoption law and family mediation. My finger hovered over the mouse. Adoption law, of course. That's how William had known him. The memory surfaced unbidden, sharp and painful even after 35 years. Christine had been so sick by then, ovarian cancer stage 4. She'd called William on a Tuesday afternoon, her voice barely a whisper over the phone. I'd only met her a handful of times, one of William's childhood friends who'd moved away after college. But I remembered her daughter Amanda, 4 years old, with William's eyes and Christine's smile. "I need to know she'll be loved," Christine had said. William held the phone so I could hear, not just cared for, loved. We'd said yes before she even finished asking. Gregory had handled everything: the emergency custody transfer, the paperwork, the legal filings that would make Amanda ours. He'd been William's college roommate, someone we could trust to move quickly and quietly. 3 weeks later, Christine was gone and Amanda was sleeping in the room we'd hastily converted into a nursery for a 4-year-old who'd just lost her mother. I blinked, pulling myself back to the present. The laptop screen had dimmed. I touched the mouse, bringing it back to life. There were no scandalous articles, no criminal records, no mysterious gaps in Gregory's career, just a straightforward professional biography and a note that he was enjoying retirement in Cape Elizabeth, 20 minutes from here. I leaned back in William's chair, my chair now, though I still couldn't quite think of it that way. Patricia had mentioned Gregory yesterday. William had left instructions to contact him. And Tyler, according to Patricia, had been digging into the past. What had Tyler found? What had he been looking for? The adoption had been legal. Emergency circumstances, yes, but everything documented and filed properly. Christine had signed the papers. William and I had been vetted. Amanda's birth father had never been in the picture. Christine had made that clear. There were no dark secrets here, just a dying woman's final act of love for her daughter. So why had William felt the need to prepare for this? Why the elaborate safeguards, the sealed letter, Article 7? Because he'd known someone would twist it. Someone would take a story of love and sacrifice and try to turn it into doubt. Someone like Tyler. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness. The consent form I'd signed this morning was probably already at some lab being processed. The DNA test would happen. Friday morning, Patricia had texted me the appointment details while I was searching for Gregory. 2 days from now, Tyler would have his proof. Proof that Amanda and I shared no biological connection. But William had been ready for that moment. He'd spent a year preparing for it. Now I had to be ready too. Friday morning, 2 days after I'd signed the consent form, the Portland Genetics Center was a sleek building of glass and steel on Congress Street. I pushed through the revolving door into a waiting room that smelled of disinfectant and cold efficiency. Gray chairs in perfect rows, a fish tank bubbling in the corner, morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. They were already there. Tyler stood near the reception desk in a charcoal suit phone in hand. Amanda sat staring at nothing, hands folded in her lap. My daughter didn't look up when I entered, but Tyler did. He straightened, slipping his phone away. "Catherine, right on time." Something cold flickered in his eyes, satisfaction, maybe triumph. Amanda finally glanced up, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. No greeting, no acknowledgement beyond that brief, pained look. Tyler stepped forward, extending his hand. "Thank you for being reasonable about this." His grip was firm, professional. I forced myself to meet his eyes, to shake his hand like a civilized person. And that's when I saw it. The scar. Small, barely noticeable, a thin white line just above his left eyebrow disappearing into his hairline. My breath caught. 25 years ago, Deering High School Gymnasium, a gangly 18-year-old with a split forehead, blood dripping into his eyes. He'd slipped during basketball practice, hit the bleachers hard. I'd cleaned the wound, applied butterfly bandages, told him he'd have a cool scar to show for it. Tyler Nash. One of my students' poor family anger issues, always on the edge of expulsion. I'd vouched for him, bought him lunch, wrote recommendation letters. I'd introduced him to William at a school fundraiser, hoping a positive role model might help. And now, he was here forcing me to prove my daughter belonged to me. Catherine. Tyler's voice pulled me back. Are you all right? I was still holding his hand, staring at that tiny scar. I released him, forcing my expression neutral. I'm fine, ready to get this over with. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying me. Did he recognize me too? If he did, it didn't show. Mrs. Monroe. A woman in scrubs appeared, Janet Coleman, according to her name tag. Dr. Anderson is ready for you. The examination room was even more sterile. White walls, metal cabinets, a padded table with crinkling paper. Dr. Anderson was calm and efficient, explaining the procedure in a voice designed to soothe. Just a cheek swab, quick and painless. Results in 72 hours. The cotton swab was rough against the inside of my cheek. Amanda would go next, then Tyler as witness. Everything documented and official. 72 hours. 3 days until Tyler had his proof that Amanda and I shared no biological markers. But William had prepared for this moment. Patricia had Article 7 ready, and now I had something Tyler didn't know I possessed. I knew exactly who he was. The boy I'd saved. The one I'd helped and believed in and introduced to my family. He'd used my own kindness to worm his way into our lives. He'd married my daughter, waited for William to die, and now he was trying to steal everything we'd built. As Janet sealed my sample in a labeled vial, the shock crystallized into something harder. Determination. Tyler thought he was 3 steps ahead. He thought he understood the game he was playing. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd underestimated me. I would find out exactly who Tyler Nash had become in the 25 years since I'd bandaged his forehead and believed in his potential. And I would expose him for what he was doing to my family. Friday evening, an hour after Patricia's text, I met her at the office as Old Port came alive with evening lights, restaurants glowing against the October chill couples strolling past boutiques. My world was crumbling and life just continued around me. Patricia was waiting, desk lamp casting shadows across her exhausted face. Sit down. Not a request. She knew I'd need to be sitting. She slid a manila folder across the desk. Bank statements, pages of them, highlighted in yellow amounts, circled in red. William's business account, Patricia said quietly. Tyler had signature authority as of 2 years ago. William added him after the wedding for succession planning. My stomach dropped. What did he do? Over the last 8 months of William's life, Tyler made systematic withdrawals. 5,000 here, 7,000 there, always with plausible vendor names properly documented. She pulled out another sheet. Except the vendors don't exist. The room tilted. I gripped the desk. $95,000, Patricia said. Gone. Funneled into a secondary account we only discovered because William left notes in a separate ledger, one Tyler didn't know about. William knew. He discovered it 6 months before he died. And instead of confronting Tyler, he did something brilliant. Patricia's jaw tightened. He let it continue. What? He documented everything. Every false invoice, every forged signature, every transfer. He built an airtight case while he was dying. She tapped the folder. He made sure the evidence would speak for him. I stared at the statements, seeing William's methodical mind at work even as cancer ravaged him. Planning, preparing, protecting us. Does Amanda know? The question escaped before I could stop it. Patricia's expression softened with something like pity. That's what we need to find out. The implications hit like a physical blow. Victim or accomplice, had Tyler hidden this, or had Amanda watched him steal from her dying father and said nothing? I thought of Wednesday morning. Amanda in my entryway, guilt in her eyes when she glanced back. "I'm sorry, I have to do this." Had she meant more than just the DNA test? "There's more," Patricia said, pulling out a handwritten note in William's script. "The secondary account isn't in Tyler's name alone. There's a co-signer, Brenda Nash." Brenda? Tyler's mother. Patricia's lips pressed thin. Which means this wasn't opportunistic theft. It was planned, possibly from the beginning. The room felt too small. Tyler hadn't just married into our family, he'd infiltrated it. With his mother as accomplice, he'd waited for William to be at his weakest and systematically stolen nearly $100,000. And I'd helped him. I'd been the school nurse who'd vouched for him, believed in him, introduced him to William. "What do we do?" I asked. "We wait." Patricia closed the folder. "The DNA results will be ready Monday morning. When Tyler thinks he has proof that Amanda isn't legally entitled to William's estate, he'll make his move. That's when we show him everything, Article 7, the theft evidence, all of it." She met my eyes. "William built a trap, Catherine. Now we just let Tyler walk into it." I nodded, hands still shaking. 3 more days. 3 days until the DNA results confirmed what we all already knew, that Amanda and I shared no biological connection. But biology didn't matter. William had made sure of that. The truth about Amanda's adoption, about Tyler's theft, about William's meticulous preparation would all come out at once, and there would be nowhere left for anyone to hide. Monday morning, week 2, 72 hours after the test. The conference room felt smaller than it had last Friday. Same white walls, same metal table. But now the air was thick with tension. We gathered like opposing armies, Tyler and Amanda on one side, Patricia and me on the other. Dr. Anderson sat at the head, a manila envelope before him. "I have the DNA test results," he said, his professional calm barely masking discomfort. Tyler leaned forward. Amanda sat perfectly still, eyes fixed on nothing. Dr. Anderson opened the envelope. "The analysis is conclusive. Catherine Monroe and Amanda Harper share no biological markers. There is 0 probability of a maternal relationship." Tyler's face transformed into something uglier triumph. "I knew it." He turned to me. "You're not her biological mother. You never were." Amanda made a small sound like air being punched from her lungs. "Mom." I stood slowly, feeling calmer than I had in days. "I know, sweetheart. I've always known." "You what?" Tyler's triumph faltered. I turned to face him fully. "And I also know who you are, Tyler." His eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "The scar above your eye. You got it 25 years ago at Deering High School. Basketball practice, gymnasium floor bleachers." My voice was steady, clinical. "You were 18. I was the school nurse who bandaged you up." The color drained from his face. "You were a senior with anger issues, a poor family that couldn't afford college. I vouched for you when teachers wanted you expelled. I wrote recommendation letters. I helped you get financial aid." I paused. "And when you graduated, I introduced you to my husband." Amanda's head swiveled to Tyler, horror dawning. "William gave you a job at his construction company. Part-time while you attended community college on that scholarship I helped you get. He mentored you for 4 years, Tyler. Paid for your textbooks when your aid fell short. You worked for us from age 19 to 23. Tyler's jaw clenched. "That was a long time ago." "It was. So tell me, when did you start planning this? When you randomly met Amanda at that reunion 5 years ago? Or had you been tracking our family longer?" "You're insane." "Am I?" I pulled out my phone, showed him the photo Patricia had found, his old employee file. "You had access to our home, our finances, our lives. Then you disappeared. Said you were moving to Boston for law school. I did move to Boston, and came back engaged to my daughter." I met his eyes. "What are the odds?" The room went silent. Amanda stood abruptly, chair scraping. "Tyler." Her voice shook. "Tell me she's lying. Tell me you didn't know her before we met." Tyler opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time, he looked genuinely rattled. "We met at the reunion, Amanda. You know that. But you knew who I was before then." Amanda's voice rose. "You knew she was my mother. You knew about my father." She pressed a hand to her mouth. "Did you marry me to get to my family?" "That's ridiculous. I love you. Do you—" Patricia's voice cut like a blade, "because the evidence suggests otherwise." Tyler spun toward her. "What evidence?" "This is speculation from a grieving widow." "Before you say another word, Mr. Nash." Patricia interrupted her tone. "Arctic. William left something behind, recorded 5 years ago, not long after your engagement." She placed a flash drive on the table. "A video testimony, explaining everything." Tyler's face went white. Amanda stared at the flash drive like it was a bomb. "What do you mean, explaining everything?" "William knew," I said quietly, looking at my daughter. "He knew who Tyler really was, what he was planning, and he prepared for this exact moment." "That's impossible," Tyler said, but his voice cracked. "He couldn't have what Patricia asked. Recognized you, investigated you, documented everything." She picked up the flash drive. "William spent the last year of his life building a case against you, Mr. Nash. Every piece of evidence, every theft, every lie, all recorded." Tyler opened his mouth to deny it, but no words came. Amanda was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face as she looked between her husband and her mother. "What theft? What are you talking about?" Patricia's expression was grim. "That's what the video will show us." Before William's video plays, comment 1 if you're still with me. Quick note, this story includes dramatized elements for educational storytelling. If that's not your preference, feel free to pause here. But if you want to see what William recorded for Tyler, stay close. Immediately following the revelation, Patricia connected her laptop to the wall-mounted screen. The room fell silent. William's face filled the screen. He looked thinner, the cancer had already begun its work, but his eyes were sharp, clear, filled with determination. He wore the blue shirt I'd bought him for his birthday. "If you're watching this," William began, his voice slightly hoarse but steady, "then someone has challenged Amanda's place in our family. Someone has demanded a DNA test." He paused, a sad smile crossing his face. "They're right. Amanda isn't biologically ours, but that fact is irrelevant." Amanda made a soft sound. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Amanda, sweetheart." William continued as if he could see her. "Your mother, Christine, was one of my oldest friends. When she was dying, she asked us to raise you, not as guardians, as parents. We chose you, baby girl." Tears streamed down Amanda's face. The adoption was legal and complete. Every document filed, every requirement met. You are our daughter in the eyes of the law. No DNA test will ever change that. His expression hardened. "But I knew someday someone might try to use your adoption as a weapon." William leaned closer to the camera. "Tyler Nash, I know it's you watching this." Tyler went rigid. "Did you think I wouldn't recognize you, the boy Catherine saved at Deering High, the one I mentored for 4 years?" William's voice was gentle, almost pitying. "I knew the moment you showed up at that reunion. I knew exactly who you were and what you were planning." "This is insane," Tyler muttered. "I hired investigators, Tyler. I documented everything. Your chance meeting with Amanda, except you'd been watching our family for years, waiting for the right opportunity." William's jaw tightened. "And then 6 months before I died, you started stealing from me." Amanda's head whipped toward Tyler. "What, $95,000 over 8 months? Small withdrawals, fake vendors, forged signatures." William's voice was cold now. "You thought I was too sick to notice, but I documented every theft, every lie, every manipulation." Tyler stood abruptly. "You can't prove—" "Sit down," Patricia said sharply. William continued as if anticipating the interruption. "I could have stopped you immediately. I could have had you arrested, prosecuted, destroyed. But I wanted something better than revenge. I wanted to protect my family even after I was gone. My vision blurred with tears. So I built a trap, Tyler. Article 7 of my will states that anyone who challenges Amanda's legitimacy immediately forfeits their own claim to family assets. William smiled. You played right into it. The moment you pushed for that DNA test, you disqualified yourself from everything. Tyler's face went from white to gray. Catherine. William's voice gentled, speaking directly to me across 2 years and a grave. I know you're blaming yourself, thinking you brought Tyler into our lives. You saw a boy who needed help and you helped him. That's who you are. That's why I loved you. Don't let his choices taint your compassion. I pressed my hand over my mouth, unable to hold back a sob. Amanda, sweetheart, trust your mother. She's stronger than Tyler ever imagined. William's eyes were fierce. And remember, family isn't about blood. It's about choice. We chose you. Every day we chose you. Nothing will ever change that. The screen went black. For a long moment, no one moved. Amanda sat, frozen tears streaming silently. Tyler stared at the blank screen like it had betrayed him. Then Tyler lunged toward the door. Patricia's voice stopped him cold. Sit down, Mr. Nash. We're not finished yet. He froze, hand on the doorknob, breathing hard. That video was recorded 5 years ago, Patricia said, standing slowly. But William's preparations didn't stop there. He spent his final year gathering evidence. Every forged signature, every fake invoice, every dollar you stole, it's all documented. And it's all been submitted to the Cumberland County District Attorney's Office. Tyler's hand dropped from the door. You're not walking out of here, Mr. Nash. You're walking into a courtroom. The silence after William's video felt like a held breath. Patricia opened a thick folder on the table, spreading documents across the surface. This is what William spent his final year compiling. Bank statements, forged signatures, fake vendor invoices, $95,000 stolen systematically over 8 months while he was dying. She slid a highlighted page toward Tyler. Under Article 7, anyone who challenges Amanda's legitimacy forfeits all inheritance rights. You did that Friday. Her voice was clinical. But the theft is criminal. The district attorney received this file 3 days ago. Tyler's breathing went shallow. You're facing multiple felony counts, Mr. Nash. Forgery, embezzlement, theft by deception. He set me up. Tyler exploded, slamming his fist on the table. This whole thing was a trap. He deliberately let me. He gave you the rope to hang yourself, Patricia corrected coldly. And you did. Amanda stood abruptly. Tyler. Her voice shook. Is it true, all of it? Amanda, listen. Did you steal from my father while he was dying? Silence, then barely audible. Yes. Amanda's face crumpled. But when she spoke, her voice was steadier than I'd heard in days. I saw you. Everyone turned to her. 3 weeks ago, I saw you transfer $5,000 from our joint account to one I didn't recognize. You said it was a business investment. Tears streamed down her face. I wanted to believe you, so I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to know. My heart broke for her. I'm so sorry, Mom, she whispered, looking at me. I should have said something. I should have trusted you instead of him. The conference room door opened. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside. Tyler Nash. Tyler backed away from the table. This is insane. Mr. Nash, you're under arrest for embezzlement and forgery. The officer moved forward with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. She's not even her real mother, Tyler shouted, pointing at me as the officer cuffed his wrists. The DNA test proves that Amanda's not her biological daughter. The officer paused, glancing at Patricia. The adoption was legal, Patricia said calmly. Every document filed 35 years ago. Amanda is Catherine's daughter in every legal sense. But not biological. Tyler was being pulled toward the door, fighting against the officers. Blood is all that matters. She's nothing to her. That's where you're wrong. My voice cut through his tirade. I stood, meeting his wild eyes with perfect calm. I am the mother who rocked her through nightmares, who taught her to ride a bike, who sat beside her hospital bed when she had pneumonia at 7. My voice caught, but I pushed through. I am the mother who helped her pick out a wedding dress and welcomed you into our family because she loved you. Tyler's face twisted with rage and defeat. Blood doesn't make family, Tyler. Choice does. Love does. I stepped closer. I am Amanda's mother because I chose to be, every single day for 35 years. The officers pulled him toward the door. He was still shouting, but the words had lost their power. The door closed behind him with a heavy click. For a moment, the four of us, Amanda, Patricia, Dr. Anderson, and I, stood in suddenly quiet room. Then Amanda turned to me, face streaked with tears. "Mom." Her voice broke. "I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have—" She couldn't finish. She just stood there, arms wrapped around herself, looking more lost than I'd seen her since she was 4 years old, and Christine had just died. I opened my arms. And my daughter, blood or no blood, finally came home. Patricia and Dr. Anderson quietly left the room. The door closed with a soft click, and suddenly it was just the two of us, mother and daughter, in a conference room that had witnessed so much pain. Amanda stood frozen in my arms for a moment, then her entire body seemed to collapse. She buried her face in my shoulder and wept deep, wrenching sobs that shook us both. "I'm so sorry," she gasped between breaths. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was so weak. I let him blind me." "Shh." I stroked her hair the way I had when she was small and the nightmares came. "I know, sweetheart. I know. I saw the money. I saw him take it, and I told myself it was nothing, that I was being paranoid, that he loved me." Her voice broke. "How could I be so stupid?" "You weren't stupid. You were scared." I pulled back just enough to look at her face to wipe the tears from her cheeks. Fear makes us do things we'd never do otherwise. It makes us doubt what we know is true. It makes us choose silence when we should speak. But I should have trusted you. I should have known. "Amanda." I gripped her shoulders gently. "You made a mistake. You're human. And now you have to learn from it." She nodded, still crying but listening. "You have to learn to be stronger, to trust your instincts, to speak up even when it's hard, even when you're afraid of what you might lose." I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And I'll be here to teach you. That's what mothers do." Fresh tears spilled over. "I don't deserve—" "Stop." My voice was firm now. "You are my daughter. You always have been. One mistake doesn't change that. Nothing changes that." We stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the sterile conference room, and slowly Amanda's breathing steadied. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. Finally, her voice small. "About the adoption. About Christine. Why did you keep it secret?" I'd known this question would come. William and I had discussed it years ago, decided together what we'd say if Amanda ever asked. "Because you didn't need to know," I said simply. "You were 4 years old when Christine died. You didn't remember her. And you were our daughter, Amanda, in every way that mattered. We didn't want you to feel different or less than, or like you had to prove you belonged. You just belonged. But the truth is that we chose you. Every single day from the moment Christine asked us to raise you, we chose you." I took her hands in mine. Not because paperwork said we had to, not because it was convenient, but because we loved you. Because you were ours. Amanda's fingers tightened around mine. "I wish Dad were here." "So do I." My throat tightened. But he prepared for this, sweetheart. He saw it coming and he made sure we'd be protected. He made sure you'd be protected. From Tyler. Her voice hardened slightly at the name. "From anyone who would try to hurt you." I squeezed her hands. "That's what love is, Amanda. It's not just holding someone close. It's standing between them and the world when the world turns ugly." We left the genetics center together, stepping into the cold October air of Congress Street. The afternoon sun was bright, casting long shadows across the sidewalk. People walked past us, businessmen checking phones, mothers pushing strollers, couples laughing over coffee, all of them living their ordinary lives, unaware that ours had just been torn apart and stitched back together. Amanda linked her arm through mine the way she used to when she was young, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I took a deep, full breath. The air was cold and clean, and it filled my lungs completely. We were going to be okay. That evening, Patricia came by with one last envelope. "William left instructions," she said quietly at my doorway. This one was to be delivered after everything was resolved. The envelope was the same cream-colored paper, but without a red wax seal. Just my name in William's handwriting, and beneath it, "For after the storm." I waited until she left before opening it. "My dearest Kat, if you're reading this, then the plan worked. Tyler's exposed, Amanda knows the truth, and you're both still standing. I knew you would be. By now you've probably blamed yourself 100 times for bringing Tyler into our lives. Stop it. You saw a boy who needed help, and you helped him. That's who you are. That's who I fell in love with. Now I need you to do something for me. Use what I left behind to build something good. A foundation focused on protecting elderly people from financial abuse. Something that educates families, provides legal resources, helps victims fight back. Call it Eleanor's Shield, maybe, after the woman I loved more than life itself. Patricia can help set it up. I've already discussed it with her. There's money set aside specifically for this. And Kat, I know you're planning to bury yourself in grief and duty. Don't. You're 65, not 95. You have years ahead of you, good years. Diane Foster has been asking about you, hasn't she? That kind woman from down the street who brought casseroles and sat with you through the worst nights. She cares about you, Kat. Let her in. Not as a replacement for what we had, but as a friend, as company. You deserve to laugh again, to have coffee with someone who makes you smile, to live, not just survive. I'll always be with you in the memories we made, in the daughter we raised, in the life we built together. But I'm gone, my love, and you're still here. Live for both of us now. I love you. I've loved you since the day we met, and I'll love you beyond whatever comes next. Thank you for 43 beautiful years. Yours always, William. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried, not desperate sobs, but something softer, something that felt like healing. William's final gift wasn't just protection or justice. It was permission. Permission to move forward. Permission to build something new. Permission to live. I folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the first one in the keepsake box. Tomorrow I'd call Patricia about the foundation. I'd start turning William's idea into reality, creating something that would help other families avoid what we'd been through. Tonight I'd let myself feel the loss, the weight of 2 years without him, the ache of knowing I'd never hear his voice again. And then when morning came, I'd begin again. 8 weeks later, I sat in Cumberland County Courthouse. The courtroom was all dark wood and high ceilings, the kind of place designed to remind people that justice was serious business. Amanda sat beside me, Patricia, on my other side. Across the aisle, Tyler and his mother, Brenda Nash, sat with their public defenders, both looking smaller than I remembered. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements, forged signatures, William's meticulous documentation, all laid out in neat folders for the judge and jury. Patricia had done her job well. Amanda was called to testify on the third day. She walked to the stand with her head high, though I could see her hands trembling as she was sworn in. The prosecutor was gentle but thorough. Yes, she'd seen Tyler transfer money. Yes, she'd stayed silent. Yes, she understood now that her silence had enabled the theft to continue. "I was afraid," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Afraid of losing my husband, afraid of the truth. I made the wrong choice, and I have to live with that." Judge Rachel Stevens leaned forward. "Ms. Harper, your testimony today shows remorse and accountability. While your silence was deeply troubling, the prosecution has determined that you were not an active participant in the theft. You will not face criminal charges. But let this be a lesson. Silence in the face of wrongdoing makes us complicit." Amanda nodded, unable to speak. When it was my turn, I read the victim impact statement Patricia had helped me prepare. William Monroe spent his final year protecting his family from a predator he'd once tried to help. He documented every theft, every lie, every manipulation, not out of vengeance, but out of love. I looked directly at Tyler. You took his money. You tried to take his daughter. But you couldn't take what really mattered, the family we built on choice, and love, not blood and greed. Tyler stared at the table, jaw clenched. My daughter and I are stronger because of what you put us through, I continued. And we'll spend the rest of our lives making sure other families don't suffer what we did. The verdict came swiftly, guilty on all counts for both Tyler and Brenda. Judge Stevens didn't hesitate at sentencing. Mr. Nash, you exploited a relationship built on trust and kindness. You stole from a dying man who'd once been your mentor. This court sentences you to 9 years in state prison. Tyler's face went white. Mrs. Nash, as co-conspirator and co-signer on the fraudulent account you enabled and profited from your son's crimes. 5 years in state prison. Brenda made a small sound but said nothing. The bailiff led them both away. Tyler didn't look back. Brenda did just once, her eyes meeting mine across the courtroom. I saw no remorse there, just anger that she'd been caught. Outside, the November air was cold and sharp. Amanda slipped her hand into mine, something she hadn't done since she was a little girl. Mom, she said quietly, can we go home now? I looked at my daughter. The past 8 weeks had aged her in some ways, matured her in others. The guilt still lived in her eyes, but so did something new, strength. The kind that comes from facing your mistakes and choosing to be better. Yes, sweetheart, I said, squeezing her hand. Let's go home. 1 year later, on a crisp October morning, I stood before a building on Congress Street. The storefront windows gleamed in the autumn sunlight, freshly painted letters spelling out William's Legacy Foundation, protecting families, honoring choice. Not Eleanor's shield, as William had suggested. Amanda and I had talked about it for weeks, and we'd both agreed this wasn't about memorializing me. It was about continuing what William had started, protecting families from predators like Tyler. Inside, the small office buzzed with quiet activity. Patricia was reviewing intake forms with a new paralegal. Volunteers arranged informational brochures on tables. A banner stretched across the back wall. Family isn't blood, it's choice. Amanda stood near the front greeting guests as they arrived. She wore a navy dress and her grandmother's pearls, the ones William's mother had given her on her 16th birthday. She looked confident, poised. Nothing like the broken woman who'd stood in that genetics center conference room a year ago. Diane appeared at my elbow with 2 cups of coffee. Nervous? She asked, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. Terrified? I admitted, accepting the cup gratefully. Over the past year, Diane had become what William hoped she would, a friend, a companion, someone who understood grief but refused to let me drown in it. We had coffee most mornings now. She made me laugh. She listened when I needed to talk about William. She never tried to replace what I'd lost, just offered something new. You're going to be wonderful, Diane said, squeezing my hand briefly before melting back into the small crowd. Patricia called for attention, and the room quieted. Thank you all for coming, she began. A year ago, a good man's final wish was carried out. William Monroe wanted to create something that would protect families from financial predators, that would honor the truth, that family is built on love and choice, not DNA. She gestured to Amanda. Today, that vision becomes reality. Amanda, would you like to say a few words? My daughter stepped forward. For a moment, I saw her as she'd been at 4 years old, small, scared, grieving her mother, Christine. Then I saw her as she was now, strong, purposeful, healing. My father spent his last year protecting me from someone who wanted to destroy our family. Amanda said, her voice steady. He taught us that biology doesn't define family. Choice does. Love does. Sacrifice does. She looked at me and I saw tears in her eyes, but also pride. This foundation will help other families facing what we faced: financial abuse, manipulation, predators who exploit trust. Will provide legal resources, education support. She paused, because no one should have to face those battles alone. The room erupted in applause. Amanda moved to the ribbon stretched across the doorway, holding the oversized scissors Patricia handed her. I joined her, placing my hands over hers. "Together," she whispered. "Always," I replied. We cut the ribbon together, and it fell in a silken puddle at our feet. The room cheered. Diane smiled from the corner. Patricia nodded approvingly. And in that moment, I felt it a warmth that had nothing to do with the October sun streaming through the windows. William was here. Not literally, not physically, but in the work we were doing and the daughter we'd raised and the legacy of love and protection he'd left behind. He would have been so proud. That evening, Diane and I sat in the garden William had planted with his own hands. The October air was cool but not cold, carrying the last warmth of autumn. The wooden bench beneath us, the one William had built the summer before he got sick, still held firm. Around us, his roses bloomed in defiant reds and whites, refusing to surrender to the coming frost. He knew what he was doing with these, Diane said quietly, gesturing to the roses, varieties that bloom late, that hold on longer than they should. I smiled. That was William, always planning ahead. He planned for you, too, you know. Diane turned to look at me. He knew you'd need someone after he was gone. Not to replace him, just to remind you that life keeps going. My throat tightened. He told you that. Not in so many words, but that last summer when I'd come by with casseroles and he'd insist I stay for coffee. She paused. He'd talk about you, about how strong you were, how much you'd given up to care for him. And he'd say, "Make sure Kat doesn't disappear into that empty house after I'm gone, Diane. Promise me." Tears blurred my vision. I didn't know. He loved you fiercely. Diane's hand found mine on the bench. And he wanted you to be happy, not just surviving. Happy. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the roses sway in the evening breeze. "Are you," Diane asked softly, "happy?" I considered the question. A year ago, even 6 months ago, I wouldn't have known how to answer. But now, sitting in William's garden with the foundation launched and Amanda healing and this kind woman beside me asking if I was happy, I'm getting there, I said honestly. Some days are harder than others, but yes, I think I'm getting there. Diane squeezed my hand gently. That's all anyone can ask. The back door opened and Amanda appeared with a tray bearing 3 mugs of tea and a plate of cookies. She'd changed out of her navy dress into jeans and an oversized sweater, William's old fisherman's knit that she'd claimed after he died. "I made tea," she announced, setting the tray on the small garden table. "And I was thinking, Diane, would you like to stay for dinner? I'm making Dad's famous chili, well, attempting to make it." I found his recipe card. Diane glanced at me, a question in her eyes. "Please stay," I said, meaning it. "We'd love to have you." "I'd like that very much." Amanda poured the tea, and the 3 of us sat together as the October sun sank lower, painting the garden in shades of gold and amber. We talked about the foundation, about the families we'd already begun helping, about Amanda's plans to go back to school for a degree in social work. "I want to understand it better," Amanda explained. "How predators work, how to spot the warning signs, how to help people before it's too late." "Your father would be proud," Diane said. "He is," I corrected gently. "He is proud." Amanda smiled through sudden tears. "Yeah, he is." The roses nodded in the evening breeze, and somewhere in the house, the old grandfather clock chimed 6. 2 years ago, this garden had been a place of grief, where I'd come to feel close to William after he was gone, to cry among the flowers he'd planted. Now it was something else, a place of peace, of healing, of new beginnings growing alongside the old. Diane caught my eye and smiled. Amanda reached over and squeezed my hand, and in that moment, surrounded by William's roses and the 2 women who'd helped me find my way back to life, I felt it, true peace. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of hope. We were going to be okay, all of us. We already were. As I watched the sun set over Portland that evening, I thought about everything we'd been through. 2 years since William died. 18 months since that terrible Monday dinner when Tyler had demanded a DNA test, 1 year since the trial. And here I was sitting in the garden my husband had planted with my daughter and a friend who'd become family, watching the October light turn everything gold. William had been right about so many things. He'd known Tyler would come. He'd known Amanda would need protecting. He'd known I'd blame myself, retreat into grief, forget that life was meant to be lived. And he'd prepared for all of it. Not just with legal traps and documented evidence, but with something more important, a reminder of what truly mattered. Blood doesn't make family. Choice does. I'd told Tyler those words in that conference room, my voice steady despite the fury in my chest. I'd meant them then. But it was only now, watching Amanda laugh with Diane over some shared joke, that I truly understood their weight. Amanda wasn't my biological daughter. We shared no DNA, no genetic markers, nothing a laboratory could measure. But she was mine in every way that counted. I'd chosen her at 4 years old when Christine had asked William and me to raise her. I'd chosen her every morning when I made her breakfast, every night when I tucked her in every parent-teacher conference and scraped knee and heartbreak. 35 years of choices, 35 years of showing up, and she'd chosen me back. Even after learning the truth, even after Tyler had tried to weaponize it, she'd chosen to call me Mom, to link her arm through mine, to build the foundation with me, to testify in that courtroom not just against Tyler, but for us. That was what Tyler had never understood. He'd grasped biology, but missed the point entirely. He'd thought exposing Amanda's adoption would shatter our family. Instead, it had shown us how strong we really were, how little DNA mattered against decades of love. I didn't hate Tyler anymore. The anger had cooled into something else. Not forgiveness, I wasn't sure I'd ever get there, but a kind of sad understanding. Tyler had been given so many chances. William had mentored him for 4 years. I'd vouched for him when no one else would. Amanda had loved him with her whole heart, and he'd thrown it all away for $95,000 he never got to keep. What a waste. But his loss had become our strength. The foundation was helping families every week now, people facing financial abuse, manipulation, predators, targeting the vulnerable. We were turning William's pain into something that mattered. Amanda had found her purpose protecting others the way her father had protected her. She was enrolled in social work now, learning to spot warning signs to help families before it was too late. And I had found mine living, not just surviving, but actually living again. Diane caught my eye across the garden and smiled, holding up her empty tea mug. I nodded, and she disappeared inside to refill it, moving through my kitchen with the easy familiarity of someone who belonged. She wasn't a replacement for William. No one could be. But she was a reminder that love comes in many forms, that companionship and laughter and Tuesday morning coffee are their own kind of gift, that choosing to let someone in even when it's scary, that's its own kind of courage. The October light was fading now, turning the roses gold and amber. I remembered William's hands planting them, how he'd chosen varieties that would bloom late, hold on past the first frost. Always planning ahead, I murmured. "What's that, Mom?" Amanda called from the doorway. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just talking to your father." She smiled understanding. "Tell him the foundation helped 3 new families this week. He knows," I said softly. "He's proud." Amanda's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Yeah, he is." Diane returned with fresh tea, and Amanda went inside to start the chili, and I sat alone in the garden as the sun slipped below the horizon. My family, chosen, built, earned through struggle and sacrifice, and the courage to keep showing up even when it hurt. William's voice echoed in my memory. "Live for both of us now. I'm trying, my love." Every single day, and in that golden October evening, surrounded by roses that refused to surrender and people who'd chosen to stay, I finally understood what he'd meant. Love isn't biology. It isn't DNA or blood or genetic markers on a laboratory report. Love is presence. Love is showing up every single day and making the choice to stay, to fight, to build something together, even when the world tries to tear it apart. That's what makes a family. It always has been. Looking back on everything we endured, I want to share what I learned, not just as Catherine Monroe, but as someone who survived what many of you watching family drama stories might be facing right now. Don't be like me. Don't wait until a crisis forces you to see the truth. I ignored warning signs because I wanted to believe the best in people. That kindness nearly destroyed my family. God gave us instincts for a reason, trust them. When someone's behavior doesn't match their words, believe the behavior. The lesson I learned: family isn't defined by blood or DNA tests. It's built through daily choices, sacrifices, and the courage to stand firm when others try to tear you apart. God blessed me with Amanda not through biology, but through love. That's the family He intended for us. Like many grandma stories you hear, mine taught me that protecting your loved ones sometimes means preparing for battles you hope never come. William understood this. He trusted God's timing and built safeguards that saved us when I couldn't save myself. That's wisdom I wish I'd embraced sooner. These family drama stories we share aren't just entertainment. They're warnings, lessons, mirrors reflecting our own struggles. And grandma stories like mine remind you age brings clarity, but don't wait for tragedy to find it. God walked with us through every dark moment. When I thought I'd lost everything, He showed me what remained. When Amanda stumbled, He caught her. When Tyler's greed threatened to destroy us, God's justice prevailed. If you found meaning in our journey, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to leave a thoughtful comment below. Share what resonated with you. Consider subscribing if these grandma stories speak to your heart, and pass this along to anyone navigating their own family drama stories. Your engagement helps others find the guidance they need. May God bless your family with the strength to choose love over blood and wisdom over silence.